You know, I've said it a few times now, and I was really, for the most part, basing it on my general knowledge on the subject and a healthy respect for 120 millimeter cannon. But that's it. Today's the day. I'm going to answer the question that nobody's been asking. An M1A2 Abrams versus a Scorpion tank from Halo. Which one is the superior tank? So I took some time and I had another look at the Abrams, and I did what I could to scrounge up some information on the Scorpion, but aside from being a single mission requirement in pretty much every Halo game, that's about as far as they tend to like to go for at least the lore of the tanks. I mean, they touch on them here and there, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to do what I can. The M1A2 Abrams is a monster of a tank, and one of a few in current military service that has had its older brother, the M1A1, in an actual tank battle, coming in at around 70 tons, 12 feet wide, 8 feet tall, and an overall length of just over 32 feet. It would be reasonable to assume that this beast of a machine would have the speed and maneuverability of a bulldozer. But under that thick armored exterior, the Abrams has a 1,500 horsepower multi-fuel jet turbine engine that gives the Abrams its distinct whine and propels that beast along at speeds a little over 40 miles an hour. However, that powerful turbine is thirsty and will provide an operational range of only 265 miles, but the Abrams is a fairly nimble tank, and at top speed it can stop itself in no more than a single tank length. The Abrams, however, is useless without a crew, and the Abrams carries 4 crew members, albeit in a fairly tight space. A driver who, as you might expect, drives the tank and is the only one positioned in the hull of the tank. Then you have a loader who slings the shells and arms the gun, and a gunner who fires the main gun and coaxial machine gun. Finally, you also have a tank commander who's in charge of it all. So with 4 people on a large combat vehicle built to operate in areas where other people might actually want to take them out, the Abrams has to be fitted with advanced armor that protects the crew, and you know what? It does. Now, I've read up on what you can learn about the armor. I mean, I'm sure most of it is probably fairly secret, but what I can learn off of a wiki page is about as far as I'm gonna dig for this, because if it's secret, it's secret, right? But the general gist of it is it's a multi-material armor that can provide up to 600 millimeters of protection against armor-piercing rounds and 700 millimeters of protection against heat rounds. However, you know what? All that armor is nice, but then you got the elephant in the room. The 120 millimeter main gun, or the M256 smoothbore cannon, capable of firing a number of different types of ammunition. The ammo that I'm going to specifically be looking at for this, because it be the most useful, more than likely, is the M829, which is basically a bullet for a tank. The M829 is designed to take out other tanks. It's essentially a dart without any explosive payload that uses its kinetic energy and high density core to punch through the less dense armor of the receiving vehicle. And when I say kinetic energy, I do mean kinetic energy. With a small cross section, the Abrams slings the M829 downrange at a truly impressive 3,500 miles per hour and impacts with so much force that the effects can behave in a fluid manner, and once through, it will then release fragmented steel inside the vehicle. Geez, that was a mouthful. The Abrams isn't the only impressive tank we're going to be talking about, because then there's the M808 Scorpion, quite its large size of 33 feet long and 26 feet wide. The Scorpion weighs in at about 73 short tons, which is right around the same weight of an M1A2 Abrams. But more impressive than that is the Scorpion, with its distinctive forward track pods, is actually able to propel the vehicle at a maximum of 33 miles per hour. From a crew standpoint, the Scorpion is more of a solitary experience, with an entire tank able to be controlled and crewed by one person using a neural network link. The tank on some variants does have a 7.62 medium machine gun position for another person to use, and seating for up to 4 UNSC Marines to ride atop the individual track pods. Without a loader or designated gunner, the turret that spins 360 degrees is not manned and is controlled by the driver inside the cockpit of the tank. tank, which resides in the hull just under the turret, and if you're staying on top of it, slightly to the left. The armor of the Scorpion is fairly bland. They don't really say much about what the armor on the Scorpion is. It's simply listed as a ceramic titanium armor, which I would assume is designed for the ceramic's ability to absorb heat and impacts. And then what that doesn't handle, the titanium was probably expected to do most of the heavy lifting beyond that. I'm not sure how well that's going to stack up against something like an M829 fired out of the 120mm main gun of an Abrams, but it is impervious to small arms fire and standard plasma fire, but ends up still being vulnerable to rockets and larger plasma blasts. Actually looking like a Scorpion, which is where it gets its namesake, with its auto-loading cannon perched on top of the rear of the tank. The Scorpion is armed with a 90mm main gun firing tungsten shells, and if you go off of what the games show you, they do have some sort of explosive payload. It's unclear how many shells the Scorpion can carry, and Abrams does carry around 40. So where do they stand? The Abrams has a greater high speed and is more useful in confined areas where the wider Scorpion tank might get stuck or simply cannot go. The Abrams, however, does guzzle fuel at an astonishing rate. The ceramic titanium armor of the Scorpion would be more impressive if the vehicle wasn't so vulnerable to even small explosions like from a rocket launcher, which leads me to believe the M829 at 3,500 miles an hour would more than likely be able to punch clean through a Scorpion, and if it couldn't, if it needed an explosive payload to get through, then a heat round or the new AMP round would both pack more than enough punch to probably do the job, and certainly way more punch than any rocket launcher. However, this isn't a one-sided fight here, and unfortunately the Scorpion is at a disadvantage with its 90mm main gun that is only 2mm larger than the main gun of a Tiger tank from more than 70 years ago. But to accommodate those saying, oh, well, it's the future, we can assume it's more powerful, even though that there's no real facts to support it, I'm going to accommodate. And I'm going to give it a boost and say it's equal to a gun 15mm larger. The only problem is that the 105mm main gun, yeah, those were replaced with the 120s. Back in the 1980s or so, right around there, the Scorpion does have one single advantage. Having 4 track pods means that it could, in theory, suffer losing 2 tracks and still be able to limp home. If an Abrams throws or otherwise loses either of its tracks, it must be repaired before being able to go anywhere, making it easier to at least immobilize than the Scorpion would be. The biggest issue I found, honestly, was the crew. The Scorpion having a lone driver who also is the gunner means that it's realistically going to be harder for the tank to fire on the move, because even with a neural network, it would still be a lot like trying to precisely run through an obstacle course while texting. Having a crew allows for the jobs to be separate and means that only one person has to focus on one task. The driver has to focus on driving and the gunner has to focus on shooting stuff, meaning that the Abrams can be driving along at 40 miles an hour while firing, and with its computer-controlled targeting system, the Abrams can be driving over fairly rough terrain while the gun is still locked on target and able to hit a dinner plate at more than 1.5 miles away. In the end, as much as I wanted to give a lot of an edge to the Scorpion because it is from the future, and I know if anyone ever watches this, they're gonna say, oh, well, it's from the future. The thing is there's not a lot of information out there. There's not a lot of detail out there on a Scorpion. All I can do is take the details that they do have out there and compare it to the M1A2, and unfortunately for the Scorpion, the M1A2 ends up being a more impressive weapon. I mean, it's got a bigger gun, and when it comes to tanks, size matters. So while the Abrams does suffer with fuel and an ability to be immobilized more easily, Scorpion suffers from an armament issue, an armor issue, and being difficult to operate in dynamic environments due to only having a single operator. The Scorpion is a great tank, but as I said, claiming that it's from the future is not a scapegoat I'm willing to tie onto. And from the numbers and the current known information on the Scorpion, I have to stick with my declaration that the Scorpion has too many flaws to survive going head-to-head against an M1A2 Abrams. Should 343 or Microsoft give us more lore or a game that is solely focused on the Scorpion tank, then I would be willing to revisit this issue, but for now, the Abrams is the winner. But you know what? That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think, and if you think I overlooked or missed anything down below, and until next time, good night.